What is going on, everybody? Hope everyone had a happy new year. Bringing you guys another episode of the Red Zone Blitz. Your host Dave from Wake Up It's Football. You got Ezra from Idiot Sports Talk.
Happy New Year, guys, and this is the first Red Zone Blitz of 2013. I'm ready to rock.
All right, today we're bringing you guys the award show, if you want to call it that. Bringing you guys 5 awards on the 2012 season, who we thought deserved them. So the first one is going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year award. You had, I believe, 5 players to really pick from, being Bobby Wagner of the Seattle Seahawks. You had Vontaze Burfict of the Cincinnati Bengals, Casey Hayward of the Green Bay Packers. You had Luke Kuechly of the Carolina Panthers and Levante David of the Buccaneers. Ezra, who was your pick between those 5 players?
Those are all good candidates. I will add Bruce Irvin from the Seahawks. He had 8 sacks this year. But my pick has got to be Super Luke from the Panthers. Led the league in tackles, everyone in the NFL. He was the #1 guy with 170 tackles this year. The Panthers desperately needed a guy to make tackles. He did it. He was all over the ball. 2 interceptions. That man is going to be a plug for that defense for years to come.
And, you know, I'd have to agree with you if it was just linebackers specifically. But the reason why I'm going to choose Casey Hayward is this. He was the only guy in the entire draft out of the secondary who even made any kind of an impact. He was 5th in the league in interceptions with 6, and he had 21 passes deflected. He never got burnt all year long. I believe he only got burnt 1 time in the 16 games that he played. So, to me, I like Casey Hayward. All the other guys are meant to be tackling machines. Casey Hayward, he also, did his thing. So I'm going to go with Casey Hayward there.
And you know what? It was a great pick. And next up, we got to talk about probably one of the most controversial and most talked about rookie classes for years, the offensive rookies. And we know everybody's going to talk about the 3 quarterbacks, Wilson, Luck, RG3. But I got 2 other candidates. I believe Alfred Morris and Doug Martin needs to be in this conversation. But David, who do you have?
This was honestly one of the harder ones to choose. I'm going to go with Andrew Luck. Russell Wilson was a guy who came in not expected to do much, and he did his thing wonderfully. RG3, he was the #2 overall pick. Everyone had high expectations for him. And comparing those 2 stats, those 2 guys' stats, very, very similar. So that could go either way. I would probably edge out Russell Wilson just because he wasn't expected to do what he did. But the reason why I chose Andrew Luck over the 2 other quarterbacks was he had more yards, and he turned, this is the most important thing, he turned a 2-14 franchise around to an 11-5 playoff team. That almost never happens. It's happened with 6 or 7 times in the history of the NFL, and Andrew Luck was, I believe, the main contributor to that. So to me, when you look at the turnover from one season to the next, Andrew Luck had the biggest impact on his team.
Well, you know what? If you're talking about impact, all 3 of these quarterbacks are in the playoffs, and they all had huge impacts. And I got some numbers. I'm going to look at my book real quick because I wrote it down. Let's start with RG3. 3,200 yards, 20 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, which is incredible. He led the league. I look at this stat. Not a lot of people do. He led the league in 8.14 yards per pass attempt. Okay, that's incredible. Led the league. He had 815 rushing yards with 7 touchdowns. And he was 5th in the league with a 65.6 completion rate, which is 5th in the league. But the only thing I didn't like about RG3 this year, he takes chances and he loves running the ball. He doesn't like to slide so much. He had 9 fumbles. You got to keep the ball with yourself, man. And Russell Wilson, like you said, similar stats. Almost 3,200 yards, only 88 yards from that. 26 touchdowns, which ties a rookie record with Peyton Manning. 10 interceptions. I think he was in the top 5 in 7.93 yards per pass attempt. Close to 500 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, only 2 fumbles. And he had a 64.1 completion rate, which was 8th in the NFL. Andrew Luck. What separates him from these other 2, I think he had to carry the team a little bit more in the sense that, Wilson and RG3 had a running game with Lynch and Alfred Morris. Luck really didn't have the explosive running back there. And he took almost 300 more passing attempts, which is ridiculous. That's one thing about Wilson and RG3. They were dead last in starting quarterbacks at passing attempts, if you look at the stats. So that means they had to rely on Luck getting this team down the field, winning games, while these other guys were more balanced. And Andrew Luck, 4,300 yards, 23 touchdowns. I know he had high interceptions, but like I said, he almost had 300 more passing attempts. He had 5 rushing touchdowns, 1 fumble, and his 54 completion rate is in line with other rookies that have played that much and that many attempts. And he was 6th in the league. That's just how many attempts he had. Now, my rookie of the year, though, David, I know I'm running off right now. It's not none of these 3 quarterbacks. I'm going to go with Alfred Morris. I know a lot of people are going to kill me for that, but let me give you his numbers, man. 16-13. That's how many rushing yards he had this year. That's 2nd in the league. 13 touchdowns. 2nd in the league. 4.8 per carry. 8th in the league. 335 carries, which is 3rd in the league. Guess who's in front of him in most of those categories?
No, Adrian Peterson.
Adrian Peterson. He was 2nd in the league with 83 first downs behind Adrian Peterson. Mike Shanahan loves play action. I know he had this pistol offense this year, which helps Alfred Morris, but it also helps RG3 with these low interceptions and high percentage passes. Alfred Morris was incredible this year, and he is my offensive rookie of the year. And Doug Martin deserves a lot of credit, too. That man had a sick year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I mean, the only thing with Alfred Morris that I'm not gonna disagree with you on is the fact that he was a 5th or 6th round pick, I believe it was.
Yes, he was.
So I mean, those guys, I love those stories coming out of the NFL, especially because he's a humble guy too.
And he still drives a '91 Mazda. Come on, that should give him an extra vote.
And he sleeps on his mom's couch. So I mean, he's still one of us. But no, for real though, like. I like the guy a lot. I'm not going to disagree with you completely, but I'm going to stick with Luck.
I know everybody's going to pick the quarterbacks. That's okay. This is my pick.
Okay.
Alfred Morris, 2nd behind Adrian Peterson in a lot of categories. Adrian Peterson, that's the man we're talking about.
I know.
Okay, he's right behind him.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It's a good pick. I'm not going to disagree. All right. Let's move on. Look, you got Defensive Player of the Year. Let's move on here. Candidates being J.J. Watt, Von Miller, Richard Sherman, Darrell Washington, Charles Tillman, and Aldon Smith. Ezra, who you got in that?
Who I got? The mentions you said are incredible mentions, especially Charles. I don't care about Bob the Builder Tillman. That man had 10 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, and 73 tackles. But my defensive player of the year is J.J. Watt. It's not even close. He led the league in sacks with 20.5. He had 16 pass deflections. Okay, you may be like, 16? Okay, that's cool. He was top 10 in that category. Now, in the top 35 players in the pass deflections category, he is the only one that is not playing in the secondary. I'm going to repeat myself. He is the only one in the top 35 that does not play in the secondary that had this many pass deflections. It's incredible. J.J. Watts was affecting game with sacks, pass deflections, and the run game because he had more tackles than Von Miller and Aldon Smith, who's another candidate in Defensive Player of the Year. Who do you have, David?
I thought I was going to switch it up a little bit just because both of us picking J.J. Watt would be, whatever. Look, I'm not going to disagree that J.J. Watt has a very strong shot of winning Defensive Player of the Year. I'm going to go with Von Miller. I like what he's brought in these last 2 seasons he's been in the league. Reading off a stat line here, he's got 68 tackles, 6 forced fumbles, an interception, and 18.5 sacks. Only 2 less than J.J. Watt, so he makes a very valid argument for Defensive Player of the Year. But thinking about the Texans' defense, I feel as if J.J. Watt has a lot of other names around him. Brian Cushing being one of those guys. They just drafted Whitney Merciless as a first-round selection this year, and a handful of others that make a collection on that defense. When you look at the Denver Broncos defense, very old, being Champ Bailey, Keith Brooking, Jim Leonard. But then you got Von Miller. I believe Von Miller is one of those guys that when you think of a Broncos defense, he's the first player you think of. And I'm not saying that J.J. Watt is not the first player you think of on the Texans defense. It's just to me that Von Miller is almost more of his defense than J.J. Watt is on his.
I don't know about all that. You still got Duvermill with the Broncos, and remember, J.J. Watts is in essence kind of replacing Mario Williams and picked up his game since he left. But another guy I want to give before we go to Offensive Player of the Year, Richard Sherman from the Seahawks. Oh my God, 8 interceptions with 24 pass deflections. He's been a shutdown corner this year, probably the best corner in the NFL this year. But David, we got to talk about Offensive Player of the Year. Who do you have? And tell me some of your mentions.
Let's get to mentions here. You got Calvin Johnson, Adrian Peterson, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady. And the reason why I'm picking Aaron Rodgers, here we go again, Aaron Rodgers, is because when you look at Calvin Johnson, he broke the receiving record, which is phenomenal. He only had 5 touchdowns. You look at Adrian Peterson, I believe is the comeback player of the year. You know, it's a shame we don't have that award on the show because I think he's a comeback player of the year. Adrian Peterson, I believe, would come in second on this category. You got Drew Brees and Tom Brady when you're comparing the quarterback position with Aaron Rodgers now. When you're looking at Drew Brees, yes, he had the most yards, but he also had the most attempts. Tom Brady being up there as well in attempts. Aaron Rodgers had the least amount of attempts between the three. Yes, which means he has less yards, but he had 39 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Brees had 19 interceptions. Tom Brady had 8. So if I had to choose between the two, it would be 2 out of 3. It would be Brady and Rodgers, but I'm going to go with Rodgers because he was sacked 51 times, meaning he was under pressure constantly. 51 times being the most in the league. If you're being sacked 51 times in a season, you're being under pressure, and quarterbacks, an average quarterback in the league is not going to put up 39 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So that's why I'm choosing Aaron Rodgers for the Offensive Player of the Year.
And that's another pick I can't get on you because I obviously agree he has the worst offensive line out of those quarterbacks that you mentioned. Aaron Rodgers is just, I've always said it for the last couple of years. That's the best quarterback in the league. But some of those sacks do fall on him because he likes going for the home run and he likes holding on the ball a little too long, but he is their offense. He does not have a running game like the Patriots or the Broncos. And Drew Brees, he had way more attempts. I told you before the show, over 100 plus more attempts. I like your pick. But I'm going, when it comes to offensive and MVP, I feel like they're basically the same at times. But MVP, I count wins. Offense, Player of the Year, I don't count wins. And since I'm not counting wins, I got to go with the man that demolished. Didn't break it, okay? I mean, demolished Jerry Rice record, Calvin Johnson. And another thing, I know a lot of you guys are going to laugh at me. He had to go up against, all right, the Madden curse. The man had 1,964 yards. He was only 36 yards from 2,000. A wide receiver with almost 2,000 yards is ridiculous. I know people are going to talk about he only had 5 touchdowns, but he was going up against double, triple coverage. Everyone knew who was getting the ball, and they could not stop him on a record-setting season. Calvin Johnson, the most dominating offensive player probably this year. Probably.
Probably.
Probably. Okay,
Yeah,
I just want to say probably.
Yeah. All right, and then let's get to the MVP. Let's get to the part where we really, find that one player that truly stood out this season. Candidates being Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Adrian Peterson, Matt Ryan, and Tom Brady. Ezra, who you got for MVP?
Oh man, this is tough, man. Like you said, Aaron Rodgers, 39 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Matt Ryan, best record in NFL, led the league in completion rate. I have Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch is one of my candidates, over 1,600 yards, or near 1,600 yards. Tom Brady, a lot of people take him for granted. Even as a Jets fan, I know the greatness that is Tom Brady. 34 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And now the big argument between Peyton Manning and Adrian Peterson. Peyton Manning and these other quarterbacks, if you look at the stats, somewhat similar. And it's not like he has a much better record than the Patriots or the Packers. And a lot of these teams, I guess we're taking it for granted when I say this, we expected them to be in the playoffs. And last year, we shouldn't talk about last year, but I'm being right now, and I am. The Broncos made it to the playoffs with Tim Tebow. I'm not saying they would have been the number 1 seed with Tim Tebow, but they have more of a balanced team than what Adrian Peterson had to carry. And that's my MVP. Only 8 yards from the all-time rushing record. We're in a passing league. They had no quarterback. Percy Harvin went down. Adrian Peterson had to carry, this team. I'm not even going to talk about his injury because him and Peyton Manning had to suffer incredible injuries and rehabs, and I think they should be comeback player of the years. But Adrian Peterson, let me tell you something. He had 27 20-yard plus plays. The next guy was C.J. Spiller with 12 of them. He had 15 more than C.J. Spiller. 20-yard big-time plays. Adrian Peterson is my MVP. He had to carry the Vikings.
I mean, like I told you, Adrian Peterson would be my comeback player of the year without a doubt. Without a doubt, Adrian Peterson is the comeback player of the year. The reason why I'm going to pick Peyton Manning as the MVP of the league is because no player, I believe, in NFL history has made his team significantly better than Peyton Manning has in his entire career. When you look at his career with the Colts, that is why they went season after season with double-digit wins. You see the Broncos struggling last season, and Tim Tebow comes in, he leads them to an 8-8 record, and they barely slip into the playoffs. When was the last time you saw Demaryius Thomas succeed and doing what he's done this season? Never. When was the last year with Eric Decker? He didn't have the year he had this year, because when Peyton Manning comes in and he starts leading the offense that he has, no matter who he has at receiver, at running back, who his center is, it doesn't matter. He will construct that offense to where he's just going to win. He's just going to win. And I knew he was going to get off to a slow start at the beginning of the season, but after a certain point, I told myself they're going to win out. They're going to go 13-3, and that's exactly what they did. And that is why Peyton Manning, I believe, is MVP. And that is why I believe the Broncos are the most serious contender in the AFC to go to the Super Bowl because of one person being Peyton Manning.
Hey, I don't want to argue too much about that because it's hard to argue. I understand the case for Peyton Manning, what he brings to the table. Just remember, your Packers, they were fighting for a bye this past week. Who was getting the ball for the Vikings? They knew it. I knew it, okay? My grandmother knows it, and she doesn't watch football, and you know what? She's dead right now. And we couldn't stop Adrian Peterson. You couldn't stop him. What did Ponder do? Was you scared of Ponder?
Now, hey, was I scared of Ponder? No, but he had a career game against it. Out of all the games that he could have done well, he did it in Week 17.
It's because Adrian Peterson set it up. Because they were probably 10 in the box after Adrian Peterson, and you couldn't stop him. He broke away for one of his huge plays, Adrian Peterson. And this is all coming from an injury too, but as you can say the same thing about Peyton Manning. It was just an incredible year by both of these guys, and it doesn't bother me if you pick Peyton Manning or maybe a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. But I got to go with the guy that was 8 yards away from Eric Dickerson's record, Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean,
number one in yards, per carry, touchdowns,
I
big
told
plays.
I told you he would be my offensive, my comeback player of the year without a doubt. Not even Peyton Manning. Forget about Peyton Manning.
And you know what? And another thing is, I will say this: Adrian Peterson plays, in my view, the toughest division in football. How about that one? I'm gonna add that too.
That's not far from the truth. To see where everyone finished in that division, and I know the Lions finished 4-12, but they were a playoff team last year, so that's not far from the truth. But I'm gonna stick with Peyton Manning as being the MVP for the 2012 season.
All day, son, all day. This is Red Zone Blitz. Oh, you better subscribe to Wake Up It's Football and check out Idiot Sports Talk. Okay, I'm a little off sometimes, but I got big ears. The ladies love me. 2013, me and David ready to rock and roll. Right? Red Zone Blitz.
That's right.
Who's your MVP? Who are your other awards? Let us know in the comment box. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And check out David's other videos and my videos. Goodbye.